All right, gentlemen, we are looking at Dynasty Trade Targets for rebuilding teams. Last time we got to take a look at, teams that were contending, looking to make that championship run. And now, if you are one of those dynasty managers looking to rebuild for the future or, productive struggle, as they call it, and you want some advice on trades, just be sure to drop it in the comments below. And we're going to give you our advice. We'll answer you directly on there. We each have a trade target that we're looking at. Dave, I'm going to let you kick us off here. Who is your trade target if you are rebuilding in Dynasty?
Now, people are probably sick of hearing about this guy because this is the third consecutive offseason that we have said this guy is a screaming buy. But guess what? Because we have been saying this for 3 straight off seasons and we have yet to see the production, he continues to dip in value. I'm talking about Kyle Pitts, and we knew this guy coming into the league as one of the best possible prospects, and he showed some promise as a rookie, but the production wasn't really there. And then in year 2, he was injured, and again, the production wasn't there. And now all of a sudden, the dynasty community is souring on him. I'm doing a 14-team dynasty startup right now with the Footballguys staff, and he went all the way at the 2-3 turn. This guy was going top 5 in drafts 2 years ago. He was going at the 1-2 turn last year, and now he's slipping to the 2-3 turn. And there's enough promise that he has shown us in his usage and rate metrics that we should still be buying. Let me read off a couple here. 34.1% air yard share. That was number 1 among all tight ends. 13.1 yards per target, number 1 among all tight ends. 26.6% target share. That was number 2 among all tight ends. And that is elite wide receiver numbers right there. 26.6% target share was number 2 among all tight ends. 29.4% targets per route run was number 3. And then 2.07 yards per route run was 5th among all tight ends. So a lot of numbers there. But what I'm getting at is his usage rates are ludicrous, and we should be taking note of it. Now, obviously, the issue is the team doesn't pass much. And really, I don't know who their QB is going to be. Is it going to be Desmond Ridder? Are they going to draft somebody? It doesn't look promising that he's going to have a 2023 breakout, but eventually he will put up elite numbers with that type of usage. Now, there's not a lot that I can say that you probably haven't heard already. 99th percentile, size-adjusted speed score. He's 6'6". He's 245 pounds. He was drafted young. But let me rattle off a few names just to show you how young this guy is and how much room he still has to grow. He's younger than Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Daniel Bellinger, Greg Dulcich, Trey McBride. And yeah, sure, there's a 1-year difference in their draft class, so nothing crazy there. But how about this? He's younger than Zay Flowers, Cedric Tillman, and Luke Musgrave, who are coming into the league this year. And if that's not crazy enough, he's younger than Spencer Rattler, who's going to be in next year's draft class. I mean, this guy came into the league at such a young age at a position that historically takes a long time to develop at, and he's already putting up really good usage rates. Now, the Falcons don't throw a lot, and he's got stiff target competition with Drake London, who has also been putting up some alpha numbers, but trade for Pitts if you're rebuilding. His underlying metrics show that he is one of the best tight ends in the league. His profile was this elite mix of size, speed, draft capital, college production, and now he's doing what he needs to at this point in his NFL career to show us that he deserved all of that hype. So he is a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. And if you are rebuilding and you can get him for anything less than a late first, jump on it immediately.
Okay, so just to confirm, bomb equals good, right? Because in the real world, a ticking time bomb is bad.
A ticking time bomb waiting to explode in fantasy production.
Of productivity. Okay, it still just worries me when someone's talking about bombs. Okay,
no, so the good bomb, the bomb.com.
Yeah, there we go. Not editing that out whatsoever. All right, so the question I think like a lot of people had, right, is that the Falcons got one. They don't really know who the quarterback is. I think it's leaning towards Desmond Ridder, maybe Lamar Jackson. I don't know. But the Falcons did go out and they signed Jonnu Smith. Does that really worry you at all? Because I think some people were getting a little bit worried of like, this is going to cut into Kyle Pitts. But I think some of those concerns or whatever it may be, it gets built into saying this is a guy for your future. This is a guy for your long-term and his age. Do you still think that Kyle Pitts is the guy that has that Travis Kelce type unicorn upside that he just can just be the anchor of your team?
I do. And it might not happen this year. It might not happen next year. It might not happen the year after, but you've got to look at these underlying metrics. I mean, he is putting up elite numbers. The problem is the pie that he is taking that slice out of is a
Oh,
teeny
love
tiny
pie.
little pie. I mean, we're not looking at it. So you might see a guy like Gerald Everett who is outperforming Kyle Pitts in fantasy, but he's playing with a much bigger pie. So a smaller slice still constitutes more pie. So this is one of those classic talent over situation scenarios that we're looking at. The talent is there and the situation is terrible. So what you want to do is you buy low on this guy while he is in a perceived bad situation, because guess what? He could get traded tomorrow, or like you insinuated, the Falcons can go out and trade for Lamar Jackson. Situations change quickly. Players don't just get more talented overnight. The talent is there, and he will find himself in a good situation at some point in his career. So buy him now for cheap while you still can.
Yeah, I think that's a big theme here in each of the players that we have for these rebuilding dynasty teams, is that we all went with very talented, high draft capital players that, regardless of situation, we all believe that it's going to pan out. Also, Dave, I really hate you for mentioning pie about 6 times. I haven't eaten today and I'm fasting and I love pie. All right, enough pie talk. Joey Wright, you have a trade target for rebuilding dynasty teams, and this is going to be an interesting one because one, you stole it from me, and I'm very upset at you. But two,
you cursed at me.
I did. I said bad words to you in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I think a lot of people are also going to be on this guy. So talk to me a little bit about your trade target.
So yeah, mine is Jameson Williams. I mean, the Detroit Lions last year, one of my favorite teams to watch. With a lot of people felt that way. One of my favorite things though was this revolving door wide receiver two they had: Cleve Raymond, DJ Shark, Josh Reynolds. Every week it was a different guy complimenting Amon-Ra St. Brown, but no guy really won that job out. And so I kind of just saw it. Let's do the placeholder for Jameson when he gets back. When the Lions went up 20 picks to get him at number 12, they knew what had happened. He tore his ACL in the national championship game, and he was most likely just going to be on the sideline for the season. But he did step on the field, and he had 2 plays. One was a 44-yard touchdown reception, and the other was a 40-yard end-around run. He's dynamite. At Alabama, he had 1,572 yards and 15 touchdowns with 79 passes caught. I mean, he is a superstar. This might be the cheapest you'll be able to get him. So I love him a lot this year.
I'm so glad you brought him up, Joey. I've been trying to tell Alfredo about Jameson Williams for years, and he just won't listen. He wants nothing to do with him. And I have just been going on and on. Alfredo, you got to pay attention to this Jameson Williams kid. He's going to be special. Alfredo, are you finally on board?
I have to do a better job of focusing on Jameson. I have not heard this name. It seems new. For those of you that are new to the show, I am one of the biggest Jameson Williams fans. He was my wide receiver 1 in last year's rookie class, and deservedly so. I think prior to the injury, he was a lot of people's wide receiver 1. But so we're going to finally catch a glimpse of what he can do for the Detroit Lions this year. And I think that, people do all like the shows and articles about winners in free agency. I think Jameson Williams is a big winner in free agency so far, because the Lions they did not re-sign DJ Chark. They did not go out and get anyone else that was a big wide receiver free agent, not even a tight end. So there's a really big possibility here that a lot of these targets are going to be headed Jameson Williams' way. And Joey, as you mentioned, extremely dynamic with the football. But it seems, there's people in basically 2 camps here, right? It's either you love Jameson Williams, he's going to break out and be a top 5 wide receiver or something, whatever. Or there's the other side of just like, he's going to be a good deep threat guy, not really an alpha. He's going to be inconsistent. Nice compliment to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Joey, what do you think his realistic potential is in fantasy?
The wide receiver 1 for the Lions, which could very well be a top 10 wide receiver with Jared Goff, the way he played last year, or whoever comes in after there. But even if he's not the wide receiver 1 for the Lions, we've seen these offenses that are high powered with pass, where the defense isn't that great, produce 2 top 25 wide receivers. There was 5 teams that did it last year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Lions could be one of those teams going forth.
Yeah, I mean, they
Yeah,
were last year. They were
Yeah.
supporting an RB1, an RB2, elite wide receiver one numbers from Amon-Ra St. Brown, and now you just inject Jameson Williams into that offense. I know at first you were kind of saying, there was a revolving door at wide receiver two. I'm not looking at this as a wide receiver one, wide receiver two situation with Amon-Ra and Jameson. This is going to be a very dynamic duo where it's more of a, I don't even know if it's a wide receiver one, A and B. They're both just wide receiver ones.
Yeah, to me, it's more of like who's lining up inside, who lines up outside. It's not necessarily who's the primary target on that team. It's just I'm really excited to see what Jameson Williams is going to do in this next season. And something that we've all been kind of talking about is just how dynamic he is. He is one of those guys that can simply win you your week of fantasy football based on just a couple of plays. So a player like that, I think, is just always worth it in my eyes. All right, let's get to the last trade target here for a rebuilding dynasty manager. And I went with another guy, another wide receiver that was drafted very highly last season. He was the number one wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft, and it is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. And man, I actually think that Drake London is a piece that works for contenders or rebuilders. Okay. And maybe he doesn't come out and just, crush it next year as a top 5 or top 10 wide receiver, but I actually think it is within his wheelhouse of realistic, things that could happen for him in 2023. I got so excited I lost my words there. But you look back at his rookie season, and amongst all the wide receivers in 2022, he was 22nd in targets. Not that great, but remember, we talked about the Falcons being a low volume passing offense. So to be that high tells you a lot about him. He was 5th in target share, 2nd in target rate, so how often he was targeted when running around. And we talk about winners and losers in free agency. The Atlanta Falcons, all they did was they signed Jonnu Smith as a second tight end. They already run a lot of 12 personnel, and I think that just fits what they want to do. For those of you who don't know, 12 personnel means 1 running back, 2 tight ends. Arthur Smith used that more than any coach in the league. He's going to continue to do that. That also kind of lends to there being less wide receivers in the field. It's going to be Drake London and the other guy they signed, Mac Hollins. Okay, I'm not worried about Mac Hollins taking targets away from Drake London or being this explosive deep threat or anything like that. We saw last year that, Devontae Adams, and I'm not saying that Drake London is there yet, but he can be. Devontae Adams was still a top 5 wide receiver with Mac Hollins opposite of him and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs and all these players that were playing really well for the Raiders offense. So I think it's something that's a very realistic possibility for Drake London to not only be a top 12 wide receiver next year, but to eventually elevate into that elite of top 5 wide receivers. And one of my favorite fantasy analysts in the entire industry, JJ Zacharyson, you can go and find his work on lateround.com and the Late Round QB podcast. He did a study on Drake London and where he ranks amongst rookie wide receiver performances since 2011. And amongst rookie wide receivers with at least 50 targets. He was 3rd in targets per route run. Think about how many wide receivers this is. 3rd in targets per route run, 2nd in target share per game, only behind Odell Beckham Jr. as a rookie, and then 5th in a metric that a lot of people are using to measure success for wide receivers, which is yards per team pass attempt. He was 5th in yards per team pass attempt. This metric has been very indicative of wide receivers being successful, whether it's from college to pros or from first year to second year. And the only players that he ranked behind in this metric, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Odell Beckham Jr. You start to put all these numbers together. It's crazy. You put all these numbers together and you look at the production profile of Drake London coming out of college, and you simply look at his prospect profile and who he is from a size standpoint, from a target standpoint, from what this team wants to do. I'm willing to take that bet on Drake London. And it seems like dynasty managers are as well. I ran another, thread of Twitter polls. Twitter's never wrong, to find the asking price for Drake London. I want to ask you guys first what you would be willing to do in, let's say it's a Superflex or even just one quarterbacks leagues. What would you be willing to trade to get Drake London in terms of rookie draft capital?
I'd give up the 104. That's about as high as I'd go. I think that I want Bijan, Stroud, and Young. But after that, I'd go Drake London.
Joey?
Yeah, around there. I actually recently did a trade where I packaged the 101 and I got Justin Fields and Drake London. And I forget it was Dallas Goedert was what I gave up with the 101 to get Drake London and Justin Fields. Like, I don't mind losing the 101 if I'm going to get a high quality wide receiver and then somebody that I see as, a top 5 dynasty quarterback.
Well done, Joey.
You helped me with that trade. So.
Applause for you. Applause for you and the Lightning Bears. So yeah, it turns out that on Twitter, most people were very comfortable giving up the Superflex 104 pick for Drake London. That seemed to be where everything broke even, or even in single quarterback leagues, the 102. Basically anything that wasn't Bijan Robinson. And so you're talking about like, is it Drake London or is it Jackson Smith and Jigba? And I think both guys can be very comparable, but there's one thing we already know, and it's how Drake London has performed in the league in what should be a worst case scenario, right? We don't even know where Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to go. So if you're sitting here as a dynasty manager that is rebuilding, and I tell you that you can trade uncertainty for a guy that models, metrics, prospect profiles, everything shows he could be a top 5 wide receiver in the league or better, yeah, I'll make that move 10 times out of 10.
If there's one thing we could take away from this segment, it's what was Marcus Mariota doing last year when you got Kyle Pitts and Drake London and couldn't get it done as a fantasy quarterback? Come on, man.
Marcus Mariota, champion of the show. Now he gets to go do it in Philly. So, that'll be a lot of fun. Well, boys, we did it. Another episode done. Nobody got fired. We got to mention the Lightning Bear about 17 times.
Yeah.
Dave, you look fantastic. Joey flew cross country and, did bad things to your pillow. So, yeah, we did it. Oh, Dave with the roller looking. Yeah, it looks good.
Beautiful.
It looks good. So next week, we have a 2-round Superflex rookie mock draft with special guest Heath Cummings of Fantasy Football Today from CBS. That is going to be a fun. Oh, he is good. I've heard of him. He's solid. He's decent. I think he's going to make it in the industry. But guys, this was awesome. Glad to have the band back together. Thank you so much for joining us and watching or listening all the way through. For myself, Dave, and Joey, adios. For more Dynasty content just like this, click the video to the left of me and make sure you're subscribed to the Football Guys YouTube channel.